Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we're joined by Kalen Howell, CIO at ChemStation. Kalen, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure having you. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. Hackers are getting smarter. Is your security keeping up? CyberLink sells industry-leading AI-powered cybersecurity solutions that detect threats in real time, so you know about an attack before the damage is done, not after. Learn more at cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Kalen, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about ChemStation, your role there as CIO?
Yeah, so ChemStation is a chemical manufacturing company, family-owned, headquartered in Dayton, Ohio, with franchises and corporate-owned manufacturing centers across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, delivering commercial grade cleaning products to clients across the nation. My role really was coming in as a digital transformation focus on modernizing and revitalizing the technology space. And that's been a fantastic learning experience and a growth experience for myself and the team there. So,
well, you know what? That's really cool. And I can't help but wonder, over the course of the time you were there to now, a lot has changed in terms of transformation, and I think AI obviously plays a huge role in that. And kind of, was that something you got to kind of leverage there at ChemStation, and kind of where do you see that taking us in terms of transformation in the future?
Yeah, definitely was able to incorporate and learn about AI in the space of the digital transformation. I'll say though that the majority of my time there was rebuilding and building a foundational, I guess you could say, structure around the technology, how we deliver technology. And so I think it's in my experience, AI is, hopefully folks know this, is not a silver bullet to come in and just solve everything, right? So the fundamentals of business and technology enablement and security and all of those things still apply, even more so with AI. But we were able to kind of learn and grow with the evolution of the models, the frontier models. If anybody's been following, we know that probably that transition between 2025 and 2026 was a real pivot point in terms of the capabilities of models. So we were able to see that, watch that, learn from that, and understand what AI can do, what it can't do, where humans still need to be engaged and involved. So definitely was able to I guess, embrace that experience. So it was good.
Yeah, I think you're right. And when it comes to, AI is not some magic cure that will, fix everything. The fundamentals, still need to be there. And I think we're in this really interesting time with AI where I like it on, well, actually, I like it on all fronts. But when whether it's operationally or I think on the security side, I get really excited because I think there's so much potential when it comes to security, because the reality is right now that the hackers, the bad guys, the threat actors, let's call it what you will, the cyber criminals are leveraging AI, and they have become, well funded because of it, well organized because of the funding, and they've become far more effective because of AI. And I think that now that we are starting to see better AI security products and in things like dark trace and abnormal, and you start seeing it being used to help, let's say, the SOC in products like SentinelOne and CrowdStrike, using it to help the SOC analysts understand what's happening faster. Those are all really all well and good. But where I get really excited, and I'm curious to see what you think of this, is I think the future of security really comes down to those products like Darktrace, where you're using the right kind of AI for everything from email security to network security, endpoint security, to where now it sees and understands what's happening. And when you get the hackers that are attacking at machine speed, you have the ability to respond at machine speed for it to say, "Hey, this isn't right. Let me stop this," and then call for an adult. And I think
Mhm.
that's where every organization needs to be now and in the future. Otherwise, it's kind of, to me, it's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. Yeah, the knife
Mhm.
worked out really well until some guy invented a gun, and now
Mhm.
you really need a better gun. You need a
Mhm.
weapon.
Yep.
So I think that's where we're at. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think what you're speaking of really is an agentic era, right? Where we can put agents that are smart and can work autonomously and be able to respond and react and notify, autonomously at machine speed. However, it's most important to have, as you already mentioned, the core policies and procedures and the knowledge and the data have to be in place and organized and up to date, for agents to work. Right? It's. I read recently just this idea that knowledge is like the new infrastructure, right? And that takes kind of fundamental practices and, um, discipline to update and maintain that knowledge and that data. And I think we've heard from the beginning in terms of AI being effective that it starts with your data, right? So if you don't have your data, you don't have your knowledge organized and captured properly, your agents are going to respond very confidently with the wrong answer, because the data is not there. So it goes back to the discipline and the knowledge of the cybersecurity experts and the domain space to be able to define and articulate, what the best practices are in a multi-layered, security approach at these different aspects of the stack, of the technology stack. And with that, and I think again, it's back to the fundamentals. Um, with that being said, I think that the fundamentals will change, right? So it's like the way we work, those tried and true, kind of practices and policies and procedures will evolve to accommodate what agents and AI can do. So that I think is a new frontier, I think.
Without a doubt. And I think part of the challenge is that when you start, and you nailed it, right? When it comes to the agentic AI, the challenge is how do you properly govern that and make sure that that you don't have some sort of, open claw type of situation where it's going and buying a Ferrari for you when you did that
Hmm.
was not at all what you needed. Sure, we could all use an extra Ferrari in the garage, but
Hmm.
but I think that I think where it gets really exciting though is in that space. I do think ultimately in the future we will have agents that are smart enough, they're directed enough to where it's going to work beautifully on kind of all fronts, right? But in the
Hmm.
meantime, what I think is kind of the unsung hero of AI is machine learning. It has come so far, in over the last kind of, 15 years. And now we're at this point where that's really what we need to be using more of on the security side, because it's not prone to the prompt injections. It gets to understand what normal is, and when something isn't right, it can stop that very quickly, without giving it the power of, of being a full-blown AI agent, but instead being a security product that has very directed lanes. Okay, I'm email. I'm gonna work on email. I understand how Kalen writes and when he writes and where he writes. And wait a sec, this is not right because it's 2 o'clock in the morning. He never writes at 2 o'clock in the morning, and suddenly he's sending out, this isn't even his voice. So I'm just going to stop
Mhm,
this. And
mhm,
I get excited about stuff like that because I think right now we have the opportunity to become very hardened targets. Because let's face it, we're now with AI in the hands of the bad guy. They're now finding vulnerabilities, and there are more zero-day exploits that are actually exploitable and problematic. Their social engineering has gotten so good, and that's always going to be a problem until we have a way of controlling and securing the endpoint, including the user. And I think that's where we're at a place where I think machine learning is the form of AI that is going to carry us into the future until agentic AI is ready
mhm,
to be kind of unleashed. And I think that's where we're at. And I don't think it's leveraged nearly enough right now. I don't think it's understood enough. I
mhm,
think it's
mhm,
the unsung hero that whose day is now, but it's tough because most people are so busy with Anthropic and ChatGPT that they fail to see that on the security side, your machine learning powered products, those are the ones that are going to win the day for you and
mhm.
secure the organization. But that's me.
Yeah,
Curious on your thoughts.
yeah. I think interestingly, I think at this particular point in time, with the whole we'll call it the tokenization apocalypse, right? Whatever, the upcoming or current shortage, the token shortage, right? Compute shortage. We can't all be reliant and dependent on the frontier big models. It's expensive. They're going to be doing less subsidization, I guess you could say, in terms of the cost of tokens.
Yeah.
And I think the organizations are starting to look back at number one, the smaller model, right? And how do you get frontier type of quality out of a smaller model? Is more tightly bound models that are focused on a narrow lane, and then you kind of come into the post training, to really bring it real focus. And I think that's where some of our machine learning can come in and bring our agentic space forward as a focus on the more precise, more uh, 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 I'll say locked in model to focus on those particular aspects that we're talking about. And then the other thing that comes into play here is also the combination of the deterministic approach to applying solutions, which means, oftentimes what I see in my best experience in working with local models is you combined the deterministic approach, right? That's your scripts, that's your what we've already developed in terms of technical implementation to solve a particular problem, using SQL code and software and products. So you apply that deterministic approach in combination of the model. We call it the latent space model. What is a model good at, right? So it's important to bring those two together, I think, and I think that speaks exactly to where you're talking about, in terms of a deterministic approach to really solving problems until agents become, smart enough to handle this.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And so, I'm kind of curious as you transition from CIO there at ChemStation, what's next on the radar for Kalen?
Yeah, so I've been working in the space of a fractional CTO space, fractional technology executive space. I'm actually working with a couple of organizations right now, And we're working through, how I can basically bring some solutions and advice to them. I'm very excited in the same space that you are in terms of enablement, AI enablement, but also in my experience in the data transformation, right? How can technology be an enabler to help an organization, a team, or even an individual, right, achieve, their goals and the mission? And I think that it's a very interesting time. I'm passionate about it. My background, I've got 18 plus years in the software quality engineering space, the software development engineering space, and the management, and then moving into kind of the executive leadership space. So technology and business is a beautiful thing. And I think right now is a very opportune time and necessity for organizations to really embrace that as things are changing. How can we help organizations and teams and individuals kind of go to the next level with that?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think that it is the most exciting time in human history right now. We've never had, such great change, such great opportunity, such great technology, and now the technology is getting easier to use, right? I mean, you
Hmm.
rewind 18 years ago, especially in the software development, that was tough. It was tough back then.
Yep.
Google was a bit of a resource, when it came
Hmm.
to solve, helping you solve your problems. But it's a whole nother world now when it comes to software development or anything else now, thanks to AI.
Yes.
It speeds it right along and makes, I think, the everybody's job so much more human friendly, right?
Hmm.
Instead of us trying to think and act like computers and kind of manipulate them and to get the products or produce what we wanted, using them. Now we get to be much more human about things, interact with AI to get the ideas, to get the answers, to create, you name it. And so I think it's a super exciting time in terms of business and technology, and no more exciting time than this, really. I mean, who
Hmm.
knows what tomorrow will bring? But I think today is a great time for it. So, in that, like, what is, kind of the ideal company for you?
Hmm.
Looking forward as a fractional CTO,
Hmm.
who's the ideal client?
Yeah, I think the small to mid-size organization. I find my interest is to be a little closer to the technology solutions, right? And to work with the development team or the technology team that's doing the implementation. That small to mid-size organization is I think the sweet spot for me. Oftentimes, from a technology perspective, you need to wear multiple hats. You need to be able to think across, the different technical aspects of the business, as well as work with the executives and understand where the organization needs to go, what's the current state, where do they want to be, and be part of the strategic planning and thinking in terms of how to get to that desired end state. So hopefully that kind of describes it enough.
Yeah, no, I think it does. And it's interesting because small to medium, I think is really, that's a very broad range.
Hmm.
Small can be as little as one or two. Medium
Hmm.
can, in some people's view, can be 10,000 employees. So
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
there a sweet spot in there that you tend to gravitate towards, the 1,000 employee, 500
Hmm.
employee? What seems to be the place where you provide the most bang for the buck, and the client is kind of, I'd say, most prepped and benefits the most from somebody with
Hmm.
your expertise.
Yeah. Yeah. I think some of that depends on a particular industry,
Mm.
and what they're doing and how their organization is structured. But I think the I would say from several hundred to probably large size, the 1,000 to 5,000 employee size,
Makes sense.
is a good spot there.
Yep. And any industries in particular that you gravitate towards or prefer?
Um, Not really. I spent a lot of time in the legal software space, and like probably 18 years or so in that space, developing software. Really love that. This passionate area. I've spent time in the healthcare and the finance space and in the chemical manufacturing space. I think that it's, in terms of technology need, um, most organizations need, that technology to help them enable them to go to the next level. So I've had some experience across a few different industries. Don't really have a particular point that I'm striving to be in per se, but definitely like the software delivery space in general.
Well, and I think the real value and benefit, is having that sort of diverse background. So when you see a problem that a company has, and that industry has always solved it, this way or gone about it this way, being able to come in and have that diverse perspective of, oh, you know what, in legal software, we did this way. This might apply nicely here in the,
Mhm,
the whatever, the manufacturing space, and kind of vice
mhm.
versa. And I think that
Yeah.
is something that often it's great to be specialized, and that's really good to have, a strong background in a particular industry. But I think having that diversity in thought and experience, I think brings so much more value, to somebody. And I think that's the reason why these large consulting firms have done so well, is because
Mhm.
you bring, until now when AI is kind of taking their job. But I think the challenges or the benefit really is that you bring that diversity of, other industries, and seeing things from outside the proverbial box of that industry.
Mhm.
And I think that's a real value to every company, to get that kind of diversity in their leadership.
Yeah, yeah. And I think for me, I kind of learned a while ago what some of my core strengths and passions are, which is really strategic, right? I'm a strategic thinker in that space. I'm definitely analytical. Learner. I'm a learner. That is like, and I learned this the hard way. I go on vacation, go to the beach, and I used to be very hard for me to read something for pleasure because I felt like if I'm reading something, it should be feeding me, right? And so, but I found out that that's just an itch I need to continuously scratch in terms of learning. So, getting engaged in different organizations and different industries is an opportunity for me to learn and connect the dots to other aspects and experiences that I've had. So definitely enjoy getting engaged in new industries and applying lessons learned and being strategic about solving problems and bringing solutions to bear.
You mentioned the legal software industry, which I think is, I think now with the advent of I think this is going to be a fascinating industry. What are your thoughts on the effect that AI is going to have on the legal software industry?
It's interesting, and I spent my time at LexisNexis for about 18 years there. And Lexus was in the AI game, even though it may not have been the buzzword of the time, but way before AI came on the scene in terms of recommendation engines and big data work. And so and I've seen that from my perspective, the legal software industry is really embracing AI big time. They've really gotten in, and there's a lot of organizations that are forward thinking and moving ahead in that space. I think in general for organizations, in particular industries that are really embracing AI right now, they are far ahead of organizations who aren't,
Yeah.
embracing it, right. They're learning what AI can do. They're changing the way that they do work, the way they think about their business models. And I think I'm assuming that most organizations within the legal software space are paying attention to their peers in that space, and they're all kind of moving forward in that space. So It's an exciting place, and I can't really predict the future, but in terms of where the legal software is going to go. But I know that from my perspective, they're already adopting and learning and evolving their businesses around the capabilities that AI and agentic era brings.
Yeah. No, I think it's really I think it's really fascinating because on the one hand, you would think the law would be a place where an LLM would really excel until you get into the issue of hallucinations. And I think there've
Mhm,
been plenty of stories of how that has backfired on
mhm,
on lawyers by citing cases that didn't exist.
mhm,
And I think the hallucinations are getting better.
mhm,
You always have to double check your LLMs, for anything. But ultimately, I think it's going to be a real game changer for the legal
mhm,
industry as a whole.
mhm,
Once you kind of balance that out, right, between
mhm,
how do you properly leverage the good parts of AI without
mhm,
relying so heavily on it, which is challenging because the reality is AI by its nature kind of lulls us into this sense of I guess it's a sort of false sense of security, right? Like for
mhm,
instance,
mhm,
with a self-driving car, it's AI that's doing that and powering that, and it becomes really easy to get lulled into, even though it's you're supervising it, it becomes really easy to, well, it's been hundreds of hours, it's done great, and that's true. But you still have to supervise it for
mhm,
whenever it screws up because we're not there yet. And I
mhm,
think we see the future. It's definitely going to be, humans will be out of that equation altogether, because it is so good at responding properly and quickly. And I'll give you a quick, for instance, we were coming back from New York a couple weeks ago, and we're on full self-driving, and this car veers into our lane, and there's the median beside us, our car, this car, and it veers into our lane, kind of didn't notice we were there or whatever, and was changing into us. I think it happened so fast that I couldn't have reacted fast enough, right? But the car moved in kind of lockstep, almost as though it
mhm.
was synchronized,
Wow.
and slowed down and didn't veer into the median and avoided the collision altogether. And I was like, oh, okay, I am no longer as good
Mhm,
as the car at this.
mhm,
And it was a thing of beauty because I think had I been just driving, that person probably would have hit us. We probably would have hit the median. It all just happened so fast, and it was
mhm.
it was just amazing in less than a second. Which we just can't react that fast. That's why we follow cars 2 seconds behind them, right? And it was impressive. But you get lulled into this sense of, so now it's done that, so I should just trust it all the time. Can't really do that because sometimes it,
Mhm,
it still does stupid things, right?
mhm, mhm.
Not most of the time, but like 99% of the time it does the right thing. So going back to the legal thing, how does an organization kind of balance that, that getting lulled into that sense of
Mhm,
security and just relying fully on it, be like, hey, answer this, do this, and do all the work, and then copy paste it.
mhm.
What's the sage advice? How do we, in this interim time where we're not there to the point where AI is far superior to humans yet, how do we balance that,
Yeah.
operationally?
Yeah, I think, well, first, kind of going back to kind of earlier, is the knowledge has to be on point. So, got to have the data on point and in place for correct answers, not just hallucinated answers, but correct answers. Got to have the data in place, and it comes back again too by incorporating the deterministic aspects of a solution or a workflow, right? To incorporate the specific human verifiable points in the workflow that is, required to have the human in the loop in this particular space. And so, if you look at even a kind of a think of it like a value stream mapping kind of exercise, and you look at a workflow and the steps that are required to complete a workflow, There's points in there where AI is going to be fantastic and great, and there's points in here where you have to have the human judgment there, right? I think again, in general, my focus is AI. I look at it as number one, as an amplifier of capability for the human, right? And not a replacement of the human, but an amplifier of the capability of the human. And today, right now, that is most successful when that human is an expert in their space, because that expert's going to know that and even smell and sense when something is not right. A non-expert, is could be easily fooled, right? So I think those are the core pieces, is understanding, and that the human is in the loop, and how do we enhance the capabilities of the human, in this case an attorney and a lawyer, and allow them to use their judgment, their experience. That's one thing that AI does not have is experience. Right? So the experience that a human brings to the table is unique, in what they've learned and gained over years and decades of time in a domain space as a human, right? It cannot be replicated by AI. So that should not be, we should not try to erase that. We need to capitalize on that, right? And then how can we use AI to amplify the capabilities of the human?
I couldn't agree more. I think that is very well said. Kalen, I cannot thank you enough for coming on today. This has been an absolute blast. But before we go, can you tell everybody more about where they can find out more about you, and where they can contact you if they wanted to employ your services as CTO?
Yeah, sure. If you go to my website, is actually my name, www.kalenhowellsr.com. It's kalenhowellsr.com. And you can find everything about me there, including if you go to the contacts page, my LinkedIn link is there. You can grab my email address, all that type of stuff.
Well,
Yep.
fantastic. We'll be sure to link that for everybody. And Kalen, and until next time, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.